Do you want to make your own podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. And this is the platform that I use because it makes it so simple to record and distribute your podcast all in one place using your cell phone. What you need to do is download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hello, my name is Catherine Moore, social worker, mom, coffee lover, and founder of Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. I'm so excited you found my podcast. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We will hear the stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Before we get started in this episode, I wanted to share a resource with you that I wish I knew about a long time ago. One that makes it easy to start a side business to generate more income so you stress less about your money, you're able to pay your student loans without worry, and you're able to afford those online shopping sprees. I see you, no judgment here, I am with you. And what's so great is that as social workers, we have so many powerful skill sets that other people want and need to learn from us. This is such an impactful way to continue making massive change in the world without spending a lot of extra time on this. So I personally use Kajabi to create my online course, and I absolutely love it. And right now, they're giving away free trials. So click the link in the show notes to get started on your side biz now. And with that, let's get into this episode. Hello,
Hello?
Eva.
Oh, there you are. Hi,
Hi. Hello, how are you today?
I'm great.
Good. So I'm so excited to have you on Social Rise. So thank you so much. I am glad that I recently found you on YouTube. And
Yay.
yeah. And to be honest, your name or your handle, I don't know what they call it on YouTube.
Rich social worker? Yeah, I'm
Yep.
not sure.
Yep. I was like, rich social worker. That's what I'm trying to be. So I watched your videos and I was like, she and I are on the same page. This is amazing.
Yeah. I really, that's the thing that I've loved so much about this journey is connecting with like-minded, social workers and visionaries. It's so much fun. So I'm excited about this.
Yes, me too. I'm right there with you. I'm curious to know though, how did you even get started in not only, on YouTube and the Rich Social Worker, but in social work in general? Like, was there something that led you to the field of social work?
hmm I always ask this question, actually. I used to teach, and I always like to know people's origin stories. And mine is that was, in my family, college was always something that you just did. Like, it was just assumed that you did. I grew up on a college campus. My dad was a dean of men. And so it never occurred to me that I wouldn't go to college. But when I got there, I had no plan, no clue of what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up, just taking a bunch of general classes and just was really lost for a long time. I did 2 years of just, this basic studies. So, English 101, your basic calculus and pre-cal and some of that stuff. And I was like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And one of my friends suggested social work. And the only reference that I had to social work which unfortunately is a reference that a lot of people have, is this concept of taking kids away from families. And so I said, yeah, I don't want to take kids away from their families. And she said, yeah, everybody says that, but social work is so much more. And what cinched it for me is she said that it's it's a really good profession if you decide that you don't want to do it anymore. It's a good foundation for anything else that you might want to go into. So I signed up for a bunch of social work classes because I thought I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do in life and I would not have wasted time. But when I got into my first social work class, I think it was like social welfare and the law or something like that. And it was like the heavens opened up and the angels came down, like, oh, this is where you're
Oh.
supposed to be. That is exactly how they sounded. And I was like, oh my gosh. I had no idea that there was a profession that existed that allowed me to be a better version of me. And I was just like, okay, this is it. I found my calling, as they say. And yeah, so that's how I got into social work itself.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's a story that resonates with a lot of people because so many of us don't know that social work even exists until somebody, a good friend tells us, or someone says, you sound like you might be good for social work, or um,
Mhm.
I don't even know
Yeah.
how people, come across it because it's not marketed, it's not really advertised, and if you see it, it's
Yeah.
it's in the bad light.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
get this. My teacher, who was an older man, one of my teachers, he said to me, "Oh, so you're following your dad's footsteps." Now, my dad is alive and well. It's not like he was there when I was growing up. We're in the same house. And I was like, "What do you mean following my dad's footsteps?" Because like I said, my dad had been the dean of men, so I knew that he was at the dormitory, and I knew that he, dealt with people, and then he moved into like fundraising and some other things. So I was like, "What do you mean following in my dad's
Hmm.
footsteps?" It's like your dad has a master's in social work. I was like, "What?
What?
How do I not know this?" because, but, but the thing is, my dad never like he left his undergrad and just was recruited by a university to work with the men in the dorm at the time, and then just kind of built his career around working with young people and different initiatives and then fundraising and some things. So he never worked in clinical practice. So I didn't know that he had a social work degree. That tells you how much we talk about career and life. I mean, he's a lovely person. We love each other. But he never suggested social work. And I didn't know. And it was just like, oh wow, wait a minute. You can do all these things with a social work degree? I had no idea. And just to my dad's point, like he didn't identify as a social worker, but his degree allowed him to do so many things.
Wow, that is fascinating. That is
Yeah, right.
amazing. I'm
Mhm.
wondering though, what, why did he not mention it? Was he trying to just let you find your own way, or like what?
No, I think my my family, that is it's a question for the therapist, right? No, I think it's a good. I think my family is very permissive within kind of general expectations. So it's kind of like that's part of even why I've been able to travel. So I lived in Taiwan for a year. I'm just living in Jamaica for the last 15 years. And I've been able to do a lot of things in my life because my family is very much like, hey, you're going to, do whatever your heart desires. Like, we're going to support you. So they haven't been very directive, like you should do this or you should do that. It's more like try on a lot of different coats and see what fits. So I think it was more of that as opposed to, trying to hide anything from me. It's just like, hey, what do you like? Enjoy yourself.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really
Hmm.
great. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So you got your degree, and what did you do then? Did you go into social work? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, I thought I would have. And you know what? Full disclosure, and I want to say this early, I fell out of love with social work several times on this journey. And I want people to hear that and know that that is a real thing. It happens. And I say it now because I'm going to talk a little bit about my story that sounds like I was just in social work and I've been in love with social work forever and ever and ever. Amen. And the truth is that there have been some really hard lessons that I've experienced as a social worker. One of them being the pain of not understanding my value and my worth and how to ask for it and not being paid well. And the pain of kind of being, yeah, this expectation of um, the expectation that my service doesn't need a dollar amount attached to it. It's just, it just should be appreciated. I should appreciate giving my service, and that should be enough for me. Like pain in different ways. So social work has been painful for me at different parts of my journey. However, I still love it. And that's because I now understand that there were things that I did not understand on my journey and that I now have kind of reconciled and gotten therapy for and am now hopefully helping others to, look out for some of those stumbling blocks so that they don't end up in the same space that I was. Now, getting back to your question, I went from undergrad and I worked for a year, and then I went to graduate school in New York. And I always love, like anything diverse, anything that's different from me or the norm. And so I grew up in Alabama, and Alabama at the time there was, you know, I guess I saw things in kind of black and white. That was kind of my experience. So I went to church with black people, and then I went to school with white people, and that was kind of my world. So when I say black and white, I'm talking about race. I'm talking about ethnic. No, that's not ethnicity. I have to I have to go back into my technical jargon, um, but I'm talking about from that perspective. So I knew, however, that there was more to life than just this experience in the South of, you know, the black and white experience. And in high school, I had been exposed to people from different parts of the world because I had gone to a boarding school. So I wanted that again. And so New York was the furthest place that I could think of to go that would also allow me a really rich, diverse cultural experience. Because my idea was to be an international social worker. And I got that idea because I had taken almost 2 years off of college between that time of not knowing what I wanted to do and figuring out I wanted to do social work. I had signed up to be a missionary in Taiwan. And so I went overseas for a year and ended up taking off 2 bookshelf um, semesters. So I was out of school for 2 years. But anyway, I loved the diversity of, a different culture and a different language and different food and different ideas. And so New York in my head was the best place to continue my studies in social work. So I have a master's in social work, and the focus was international work with immigrants and refugees. And I thought I was going to be working in the UN, and I thought I was going to be traveling all over the world and just saving people all over the world with my international social work degree. And my mom originally was from Jamaica, but she passed away when I was 10 years old. But my grandma still lived in Jamaica. So I thought, you know what? After I got my master's degree, Jamaica is a good place for me to get my feet wet in this international social work space. It's the place of my mom's birth. We still have a family house there. And my grandmother was there at the time. So I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. I'll just go to Jamaica and figure out how to be a social worker in another country. And then eventually I'll translate that to different countries all over the world. And yeah, that was 15 years ago. Still stayed in Jamaica that whole time. But it's been good. I feel like I've gone off track. I don't remember what was the question.
No, I love the story. I loved it. So, yeah, the question was, what did you do in your social work journey after school. So when you got to
Yeah.
Jamaica, were you actually like, did you work as a social worker or
Yeah,
what did
I
you do?
did.
Okay.
I did. Yeah, I actually, so funny story. My grandmother, who was living at the time and has deceased, has since passed on. Um, she she was very proud of me and very excited that I was coming to Jamaica. And she reached out to one of her friends who had been the president of a nearby university. And she said, "Hey, Eva's coming to Jamaica. She's got her master's in social work. Do you know of any jobs at the university?" And he said, "Let me check." And it just so happened that the university was just starting a social work program, like a BSW program. They had had social work as like a minor under like counseling, right? So you could take a few social work courses and they'd say you had an associate's in social work. Um, but I don't think it didn't translate outside of Jamaica at the time. I don't think. So when I came on the island, they had just um, finished the curriculum for a bachelor's degree, and they needed some social work teachers. So it worked out. Like it just kind of all the stars aligned. And so I ended up teaching that first cohort of graduates and ended up actually being the coordinator of the social work program for that university. So I did that for 6.5 years. And it was a great experience because I was able to connect it. I had a few different roles at that school. So I was a social work program coordinator, which gave me a great overview of kind of like the landscape of the education and what was happening for social workers at the training level. And then I I ended up, when I was kind of leaving the university, I kind of subbed for about a year, and I did social work. I did field coordination for social workers and counseling students, things like that. And so I was able to connect on a deeper level with some of the agencies where we would place our social workers. And so I got to connect with those entities, and people kind of got a sense of who I was and got to know me. And then because in the States, I'm assuming it's the same way everywhere, but in my experience, everybody knows NASW, you're encouraged to be a member. In fact, in my undergrad, we had to become members before we graduated. So
Hmm.
this connection to the NASW in the States, for me anyway, was really strong. Not the same in Jamaica. And so when I got to Jamaica and found out that they had an association, I kind of just did what I always did, which was, oh, there's an association. That must mean I need to connect. And one of the things I realized is that the association in Jamaica wasn't as robust or formalized as we are here in the States. And so I kind of just fit myself in, and where I saw a need, I tried to fill it. And what ended up happening is when it was time for elections, they were like, okay, you're going to be the president. I was like, no, that's not possible. And they're like, no, you are going to be the president. I mean, we had elections, but I was voted in as the president.
Mhm.
And so the last, I think I've been the president of the association for longer actually than I was the head of the social work department. So needless to say, a lot of people know in the social work world. I know a lot of people,
Mhm.
people because I've had this very unique, I think, journey, from the classroom to the agencies, and then working on the macro level. And we work closely with UNICEF and with USAID and with these different international organizations. And so, in a way, my dream to be this international social worker has come true. And now I've actually just recently stepped down from the presidential role, and hopefully we'll have elections soon. But yeah, that's where that's where we are today.
Wow, I love it. I love it, Eva.
Yeah.
Eva. I always do that, Eva.
Yeah,
Um, that's
that's
so
fine.
awesome. So you have so much amazing experience, and it's so fascinating to hear how you use your social work degree and that actually transferred over to the business world and to running programs and to being the president of association. So I'm wondering, can you give us some tips or break it down? How do we use or transfer or market ourselves to where we can take our social work skills and then transfer them into business or the macro world if
Mhm.
we're clinical focused, or even start our own business and be an entrepreneur? Do you have any tips for us?
Mhm. I do. And actually, let me just backtrack a little because what I did not share is that um, now, I guess what I do now is really focused on helping social workers to transfer their mindsets around money and all things wealth and well being. So, self care and, what it looks like to really have a balanced life. And I got there because remember when I was saying that I had fallen out of love with social work?
Mm-hmm.
It's because while I was doing all of these seemingly amazingly things, right? I oftentimes couldn't put gas in my car. In Jamaica, they use a prepaid system for to buy credit for your phone, and I couldn't afford credit money to put on the phone to make phone calls a lot of times. And unfortunately, the association operates that way too. It's 100% volunteer, and it's not it's not conducive to a healthy life for
Mm-hmm.
anyone. To ask someone to volunteer is one thing, but when you're building an organization or, when you're really a part of something bigger than yourself that doesn't belong to you, it's really unfair to ask everyone, even, especially people at the top who have to work more than 40 hours a week on this organization. It's really unfair to ask them to volunteer 100%. So that's what led me into starting Rich Social Worker, because I had gotten to a point in in my time during my time in Jamaica where I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in Jamaica. I wasn't sure if I was going to leave, and if I left, I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay in social work because it, like I said, it had just been so painful to continue the work without the financial compensation. And there are real life um, consequences when you don't have money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had started to my health was starting to deteriorate. Sometimes I couldn't keep my lights on. Like it was really getting bad. And I traced it all. My story was that it's because I'm a social worker. And it wasn't healthy. And so yeah, I burnt out a couple times, but I ran into, I shouldn't say ran into, I started hearing people talking about changing your mind and your mindset. And one of the things that I had done was I had borrowed some money from a bank, got this loan, and ended up losing the money in an ill advised investment.
Oh no.
And I said, you know what? I can either go further down into depression, which I didn't know what that would look like because it was bad. And I was like, but wait, I'm a social worker. I know how to figure stuff out. I figure stuff out for people all the time. And there are other people who aren't as, studied or don't have as much life experience as I do that aren't having the experiences that I'm having. So there's something going on with me and my mindset. What is it? I'm going to figure it out. And when I figure it out, I'm going to tell every social worker I know. And that's what led me to Rich Social Worker because I started reading. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read Think and Grow Rich. I read The Science of Getting Rich. I read anything that had to do with money and mindset. And I learned that people that have money think very differently from the rest of us that don't. And initially, I thought that, oh, rich people are bad and they're evil and they're just out to get you. And, I learned so many things I learned that that's not true necessarily. There, people are who they are, and money just highlights the best or the worst parts of them. And it's, your character is what determines the type of, your character is what determines what you do with money when you have it. It's not something that's preordained. And so I had to really unlearn a lot of things and then relearn things that were much more better for my well-being. But on this journey, I identified that there were things that were influencing my mindset that I maybe was unconscious of. And so when I realized that, one of them, of course, was the messages that I got from my family when I was younger about, oh, I don't have a dime to my name, we're as broke as a church mouse, and all these, things that suggest that we don't have money in the family. And then other messages, I'm sorry, came from the church. It's better to give than to receive. Sacrifice is more celebrated than getting, something like that. Different messages. Jesus was poor, and so there's virtue in poverty. Those kinds of messages, and then thirdly, messages came from social work. And so when I realized that social work messaging had kind of helped to reinforce some of this other negative messaging that I got when I was young, I really got um, militant about changing my mindset and changing the narrative, or helping to change the narrative in social work that we have about, how we don't do it for the money. We know we don't do it for the money. We don't have to keep celebrating that. That's not, it doesn't need to be said. Um, we just need to, that doesn't mean we don't still need to get paid for what we do. Or, we do it for the outcome, not for the income. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We still need income.
Mm-hmm.
Because what that says to people that would otherwise pay us is that, oh, great, you're doing it for the outcome, because they're very clear about the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they see someone or an opportunity to not have to pay, they're going to take it. They're not going to say, oh, no, 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 don't worry, don't bother. No, 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 no. That's us. We've been trained, and we train ourselves and reinforce these messages that um, money doesn't matter. And that's not true. Money matters. It matters. It matters. And one of the things that was interesting when I started doing this research for myself and starting the, Rich Social Worker, was, social work, when you type in social work in a Google search, at least at the time, social work salary was one of the first things that came up, or social work income, or social work, how much do social workers get paid? Like, these are highly searched terms. And so to say that money doesn't matter is not true. And I have to say that since I've been on this journey, and now maybe I've been on this journey maybe a decade or more now, and when I first started Rich Social Worker, it was offensive to people. Social workers did not like the name. They were hostile towards it. And they were like,
Wow.
that's not cool. Yeah, they were like, that's not cool. Like, why would you say that? Like, that's not, that's just an oxymoron, and it doesn't align with our values. I have to say though, now, years later, I see a transformation in the profession. I see, especially a lot of the younger social workers who get it, and they're like, I am not about this broke life. And they gravitate, I think, just like you, the name Rich Social Worker in and of itself pulls people in. Whereas for a long time, Catherine, for a long time, it pushed people away. So I'm happy to see the transformation in the profession. And I see more social workers kind of owning this concept of a brand, and, being entrepreneurial. So that makes me feel really good.
Wow. There, I got chills just listening to you talk, because everything that you said resonated with me 100%. I I even from the very beginning is just like, you're working your tail off and you're worried about money. You're worried about putting gas in your car.
Mhm.
For me, we would keep we wouldn't turn on the air conditioning in my
Mhm.
house. And, in Southern California, it gets very, very hot. I
Mhm.
I got heat exhaustion like more than
Mhm.
once because I was constantly hot. I wanted to save money. I didn't want to turn on the air in my car for to save
Mhm.
gas. So like all those
Mhm.
little dollars, and
Mm.
it totally 100% impacts your health.
Absolutely.
And we're killing ourselves doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like on so many levels, it's coming at us from all different angles, from the finances, from, we're stressed about our own finances at home. So I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
don't turn on the air because of money. And then I go to my client and they're, in the same boat, also stressed
Mhm.
about their finances. And I'm supposed to help
Mhm.
them when I
Mhm.
need help myself.
Mhm.
And so there's that mental and emotional stress on us, like, oh shoot, am I doing my job right? Am I doing everything I can? Like, I don't know if I can help them. And that moral, that sense of moral, like you want to help them, but like, can you?
Mhm.
And yes, I read some of those books, and it's true. They do, like, rich people think differently than poor people. And
Mhm.
I like struggle with, like, why is this not taught in schools? Like, instead of
Mhm.
reading the Scarlet Letter or the Bay
Mhm.
of Pigs, I don't know. Why didn't we read
Mhm.
like Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Mhm. Yep.
Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's, I guess, an issue with the school system. So on so
Yeah.
many levels, like we're not, you know, we're keeping ourselves broke essentially.
Right. Right.
And it's not necessarily our fault, but it does involve some unlearning about those stories that we were told growing up. And even stories in social work, I remember distinctly being told, don't expect to make a lot of money. And
Mhm.
so when you go and apply for your jobs, you're grateful to get a job, so you don't even try to negotiate.
Mhm.
And,
Yep. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I think, to answer your question, that Rich Dad Poor Dad, um, the author talks about how the reason why this stuff isn't taught in school is because what's taught is we're all taught to be employees. We're taught to work for other people and to keep this engine running. We're not taught that we can create our own engines. And it's to the benefit of the man that we are employees, but it's not to the benefit of us. And I think, again, I think times are changing, people are waking up. um, so I recommend, Rich Dad Poor Dad to everybody. And I also recommend that we, challenge some of these beliefs that we've had for so long, whether they're in the profession of social work or whether they have come from your upbringing. But, is it true that you don't deserve to have AC, or, can't afford to have AC when it's 120 degrees outside? Is that true? And again, what Rich Dad Poor Dad teaches is, you can, or what rich people do is they don't eliminate things from their lives that they want or that they see that they need. What they do is they try to find ways to fund the things in their lives that they want. So if you know it's going to cost an extra $100 a week or a month to have this thing in your life that you need or you want, then you got to think creatively about how can you earn an extra $100. Not necessarily, okay, my paycheck says this, so how can I get my paycheck to stretch? No. How else can you earn an extra $100? Maybe you need to move into another industry. Maybe you need to downsize your house. Maybe you need to sell something. And I believe that all of us have something that someone would pay us for. We may not know what it is right now, or we may not know how to package it and sell it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so then the work is figuring out what that thing is that people would pay you for, that you do really well or that you know a lot about. and package that and sell that and let that pay for this enhanced life experience.
Yes, yes, I love that. And on this episode, you'll hear me talk about Kajabi, before and after. That's the platform I use to, I had this piece of knowledge that I knew was going to help people. So I got on Kajabi, made a little course about it, and I'm helping people. I'm selling the course and I'm
Mhm.
helping people through that course. So
Yeah.
us as social workers, you have so many skills that you can package up and record, teach something, a tangible skill. And this can be teaching anybody. Maybe you see a need for your clients and, they need to know about, I don't know, whatever. Or
Mhm.
if you see a need just in your community, and they need to know about something, that's one way that you can do that. But I know for a tangible thing to take away, if you're listening right now, I need you to reevaluate your money mindset and see, are there messages that I have been listening to and hearing my whole life that are not serving me anymore? And are there any kind of books or webinars or watching Rich Social Worker or listening to um, a business podcast, like is there something that you can do today that you can start educating yourself about finances? If you're doing that, put it on Instagram, share it with the world, and tag me in it because I want to celebrate with you. um, and so Eva, one last question,
Mhm.
some
Mhm.
quick tips on what we can do to take our social work skills and transfer them into business, or is there overlap between our skills and business?
Total overlap. And this is good news for social workers because I think for some of us, we get intimidated by this idea of business, like, oh, it's such a big deal, and I'm not into, I'm not good with math or numbers. and, and the thing is that, like I said, business is really just about helping people solve problems. And that's what social workers are really good at. But it means understanding and learning a little bit more about how you do that. But to give you an example, a lot of, and so one of the things that I'm doing now is helping social workers move into coaching. I think that's probably one of the easiest transitions that social workers can make. Not that there aren't other things. So, I see social workers like making earrings and social workers making planners and workbooks and being entrepreneurial in that way. But I think a lot of us, especially because we emphasize this talk counseling or talk therapy so much, a lot of us are kind of primed to be great coaches. Coaching is not therapy and it's not counseling. It's moving people forward, helping them solve a problem. But I think it aligns really well with how we naturally engage with people. And so this idea of coaching, I think, or just business in any kind of sense, right? Really means that you need skills and qualities, like you need to be able to solve problems. Like I said, you need to be flexible and nimble and open-minded, and that's what social workers are. So these are qualities that overlap in business and social work, right? You need to be able to take initiative. You need to be able to think strategically and help people, really kind of zone in on not just what the core issues are, but what some possible solutions might be, or what some possible strategies might be, or things that they may need to consider would be when you are helping them solve this problem. So these are some of the things that overlap. And I think also, yeah, coaching is kind of lends itself to solving these problems for people.
I love that. I really love that. Thank you so much, Eva. And I'm so excited, um, I'm excited to just talk to you further about, my journey and my mindset that I had to go through to get to this place because, it's a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's definitely a process.
Yes, and we're going to talk about your journey on Rich Social Worker
Yes.
in our interview. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. Yay.
Yay. Okay, awesome. So, where can people find you and where are we going to be doing this interview?
Okay, great. So I am most places Rich Social Worker. So on YouTube, definitely youtube.com/Rich Social Worker. I'm on Instagram, but listen, people, my Instagram, it needs some work. So it's coming along, but I'm on Instagram as Rich Social Worker. I'm also at richsocialworker.com. So check me out there. I've actually got a workshop coming up in 2 weeks to help social workers transition into coaching if that's something that they're interested in. So
Ooh.
they can find out the information, on the website,
By
richsocialworker.com.
the time this releases, it may not even be 2 weeks. It'll be much, much sooner than that. So
Yeah,
go on today, right now, click on the link in the show notes to get your spot because you don't want to miss it. And also, I'm going to be
yeah.
revealing some juicy details on the Rich Social Worker YouTube that I haven't shared before. So make sure to tune into that. And thank you so much, Eva.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you found me, and I will see you on my channel.
Yay! See you then. Bye. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on Social Workers Rise. If you are looking to add another stream of income while making massive impact on the world, then I highly recommend creating your own online course. I personally use Kajabi and highly recommend it. They make it super easy to turn what you know into what you do. Click the link in the show notes to get started today. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you loved it, write a review and give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. This just helps other people just like you find us and join our community. Also, I would love to connect with you on Instagram. You can find me at Social Workers Rise. I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.